Welcome to the Emanations of Light podcast hosted by Audrey. Welcome to the sacred space of conversation, inspired wisdom, and messages on how to access higher consciousness and levels of awareness and our divine nature. Our podcast is all things spiritual, from celestial and cosmic guidance through storytelling, poetry, wisdom teachings, inspired messages, and emanations of love for the new earth angelic and new earth consciousness. I welcome you to our podcast.
Hello, beautiful sister, and welcome to the Emanations of Light podcast. Today, I am just so thrilled to have this divine sister as my special guest. I'm going to just do a beautiful long intro because this woman is really, really special to me and to so many of us. And I really, really want to do due diligence when I'm doing this beautiful introduction. So my guest speaker today is my divine sister, friend, guardian, and colleague, Ligia Grande. And Leah and I go way back, probably about 5 years or so. And it's probably, it's been an absolute privilege to really get to know her, to work with her, to work alongside of her. And, she's really held a lot of space for me and really has been like my number one support. And I knew I was going to do that because when I'm talking about this woman, she is really amazing. And I would have not been able to continue on my journey, go through so many of my own pitfalls and my dark nights of the soul and whatever, had it not been for this woman. So I am just in awe and gratitude of her love and her light. So you have just been so special to me. Okay, so, and then let's see. So I just wanted to express, she is not only a gifted healer, facilitator, but she is such an inspiration, not only to myself, but to so many people out there. And she's the real deal. She is a true way shower of these teachings of Magdalene and the teachings that have come through Stellar Fairborn, our mentor. Leah has really been extraordinary. And that's why I just feel it's really, really important to not only have her as my second guest speaker, but also to get her visible, to have her on here. She'll be on here, host or as my guest. We'll be talking about so many different topics. And I'm just really, really thrilled to have her. Okay. So Leah holds the divine architecture of the Holy Mother Magdala and dragon consciousness and other many incredible teachings. And she offers so many divine services that we've all been privy to learn from her. And again, she is here for us, for so many of us, in order for us to embody and ascend to our higher aspects and our true self. So we're talking about true ascension, people. So if you are called to really start to embody our higher templates, access higher levels of consciousness, embody your true self, Leah's probably your best gal to kind of come and work with. She is incredible. And again, I cannot say enough beautiful praises about Leah. And so welcome, divine sister. Thank you for coming on our podcast. I know it's a little early and it's hard to get through that intro without feeling so emotional and heart expansion and just, so welcome to our podcast.
Oh my gosh. Well, you almost made me cry too. Yeah, my tears. Thank you so much. I know you're coming from your heart, and I'm so grateful for you inviting me here in this space so we can both share from our heart. We have the most incredible teacher, which is Stellar, who we both love tremendously and admire. and follow, her Magdalene teachings from a true source. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, to say the least, with everything that has happened into our lives, a complete roller coaster like everybody else. And but it's a fervent desire that I have within my soul and my heart to serve the divine, especially Divine Mother, which I identify and emanate the most. And yeah, it's been a long journey. It feels like like forever, to tell you the truth. It feels like forever. Some days are brilliant. Some days you feel like you can conquer the whole world and you're like flying, smoothly. Some other days you feel like you're deep in the mud, like, oh my gosh, I just want to get out of here. When this is going to end?
Mhm.
But so the beautiful thing is that we have a unique piece of the puzzle, of this huge puzzle, and we all have something to give to others. We have, each unique soul has their unique magic and their unique medicine. So it's all about finding yours. We all have it. It's not only me or you, or it's we all have it. We just have to remember it. We have our divine spark within. We were created and made from love, absolute love. And anything else came as a distortion to distract us from that truth. So it's just about connecting with your own divinity, your own humanity, and going back into your heart, as our beloved Stellar always taught us. And yeah, it's about remembering that we are divine already. We don't have to activate anything. We don't have to solve anything on the exterior. All of that belongs to the illusion, as many of you may know. So we
Mhm.
just have to come back into ourselves and connect with our own divinity and remember. So once we remove all the distractions in the outer world, in the materialistic world, that's when we can sit still. And it's not about the conventional way of meditating, forcing yourself not to have thoughts and fighting with your own thoughts. No, it's just resting in your heart and the purity of your own heart and connecting, right, with the true source, the true pure source,
Yeah.
which you are part of, right? A drop in the ocean. You're a drop in that divine ocean. So it's just about remembering your way back and removing all the layers of distraction in this
Yes.
lower world,
Yeah,
right?
beautiful, beautifully said. And that's so true because we have we have so many different layers of belief systems, thought forms, energies, projections. We've just all been programmed to believe that a little minutia part of who we are, right? And it's so not at all who we are. And what we're doing when we're doing energy healing or we're facilitating and we're guiding and mentoring people, what we're doing is we're uncovering those layers that we believe about ourselves. It's like, the analogy of the onion, right? We're peeling back layers, and sometimes those layers are deep, sometimes it's pretty easy. And so really that's what embodiment really is. And it sounds a lot easier than it sounds. And it requires so much work. I mean, it requires, really dedication. It requires, for us to be really open to receive and to want to change, because because it's painful. And, one of the things about Leah and myself is, we've gone down through a lot of initiations and a lot of, what may appear as hardships. But there are just layers of stuff that we had to kind of get rid of to fully come more into the embodiment of our divineness. Because remember, we came forth into this body with lots of different templates. There's frequencies, there's energies, there's perceptions, there's like so many layers that are keeping us from accessing our hearts and our true selves. And like Leah said, it's not about meditating, and it's not just about like, oh, I'm going to release these thoughts and stuff. And it's not easy to just come back into the heart and be thoughtless, right? It's like it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of diligence and knowing the right teachings, but knowing who we are as ourselves as well. So in today's episode, we thought that, and excuse me, I'm kind of clearing as I'm going through this podcast. So, I'm hoping my editor will kind of take my sniffles out. So please excuse me. But today's podcast, I really wanted to kind of talk about the empath and the difference about the archetypes, what an empath is, the sensitives, right? And then also empathy, right? So, and so we'll kind of go into this topic a little bit, maybe perhaps give some examples, and so then we get to know who we are a little bit better. Because I know for me, in my journey as I came in, I was a real sensitive person, right? Like a highly sensitive empath, and I didn't know that. And I always could feel everything, and I didn't know where I started and someone else began, right? So you're kind of blended. And unless you know who you are, you tend to pick up a lot of other people's emotions and thought forms, and you're easily programmed. So I've always said we're very much like crystals. And just imagine ourselves like a beautiful divine quartz crystal. And if that quartz crystal is just in an environment where it's kind of like water, it's programmable. And unless you know how to cleanse yourself, unless you know who you are, unless you know what you're being bombarded with, frequencies, energies, you're going to be muddled. And that little crystal needs to be cleansed, right? So that's my most basic analogy of what an empath really is. So an empath is just a really extraordinary, emotionally highly tuned soul that has the ability to pick up energies, thought forms, frequencies, like through all the senses. It's not just like, oh, you know what, I felt someone. It's it's multidimensional in the physical body. And so Leah, why don't you just go ahead and start us off on, the empath and how the multidimensional body works, so we can get a little bit more graphic and detail and information for those people that still have a kind of, they're not quite sure about whether they are empaths, if they are empaths, what's really happening in their body.
Yeah, well, oof, it's such a broad subject, right? But I can share from my direct experience as an empath. Like, we're born empaths, and nobody knows you're an empath, when you're a child. So, for example, when I was little, I would cry a lot because of animals suffering. If it was raining outside, I will be worried that the birds are covered, that they were not, like cold, or, like very sensitive to animals. And intuitively, every time I saw an animal, a roadkill on the street, I would, of course, get sad. And I would somehow, pray for the sparks of the soul to be released back to source. I learned that type of prayer when I was older, but the sentiment was there, like, oh my gosh, like, how did it die? It died alone, if it was afraid or scared or whatever. So I always was worried about the animals, when I was little. And one of the, let's say, most obvious identifiers of being an empath is if you get lost in other people's stories, when they're going through their initiations, their experiences, if you start suffering their own pain as if it was yours, right? You cannot separate your worries. You're constantly thinking of other people's problems. And it's not because you're nosy, it's because you're really worried and you're struggling because they're struggling, and one thing is having empathy as a human being, because humans, we have that ability to be empathetic to other humans, right? But the high sensitive empath, which is like exacerbated, right? We have that gift that sometimes is a gift, sometimes it feels like a curse, because when you go into open spaces, like crowded spaces, you feel, well, I'm talking about myself, but I'm sure many people will resonate at different levels. It comes a point where you just want to scream and get out of there running, because it's like everything is not that it's attaching to you, because now, of course, I know how to set my field, protect myself, so nothing attached to me. But you feel the energy and vibration and consciousness of other people. And I have, my third eye somewhat open, and sometimes I can see faces shape-shifting into other beings. It's really like, anyway, so yeah, I can go on and on and on, but it's many many years ago, somebody was contemplating the idea of getting a divorce, of a close friend of mine, and her husband was a nightmare, a disaster, and this lady didn't have the ability to set boundaries. I mean, she was allowing this guy to walk all over her in any sense possible, disrespecting her, like, and I was so distraught from her pain. And I wanted her to take charge, to set boundaries, to do this, to do that. And I completely lost myself in her suffering, in her story. And I would come home and cry, like, oh my gosh, how can she not see this? How can, she allows this guy to abuse her and this and that. And of course, I lost myself in the story. That's one, like, red flag, right? And then um, one day, I think it was 2016, at the time I always watch videos from Sandra Walter, and she said, I remember, for empaths, you have to learn how to care but not carry. And I was like, what? Is that something that you can do? Not carry the load, the emotional load? Oh my gosh, I need to learn this, because I was always carrying people's problems, and at night I will feel this anxiety in my solar plexus, and I would go back and check my life, like what's wrong in my life, what's happening in my life that would cause this in myself, like trying to get a linear, track of events to find out, oh, it's because I had an argument with my daughter, or oh, it's because, my car is in the shop and I cannot go anywhere. It's logical things, right? But when I couldn't find anything logical, that's when I started tuning in and saying, am I feeling, other people's business, or even the collective, right? Because once you open yourself enough, your field expands enough, by the initiations and all the stuff that we go through, because this is a lifelong process. This is not one event, right? So I will start noticing that, oh my gosh, I'm worried because in the collective field there's so much fear, so much anger. And I noticed that always happened at nighttime, not during the day, because of course I was distracted with my own things. But at night, when I sat down and quiet myself, that's when I wanted to, like, binge on potato chips, or like stupid things like that, because I would get restless, right? And I'm like, what's going on? So that's how I started noticing in my body, when I started feeling other people's things. And then I said, okay, how can I not carry the load? Okay, so I have to start separating myself from another person's pain. I can really care. I can really help and offer my help and my assistance in whatever way I can, but I have to let go of the result, because the result is up to them, their higher self and God. I am not the one who directs and controls the outcome. So, I have to put my ego aside, and it's not about what I want, it's what about the person needs to go through in experience, because some people might need to go really deep in the hole to be able
Mhm.
to remove layers and experience more pain that you would, allow for yourself. But
Mhm.
I mean, who knows what exactly the right combination of settings, circumstances, and things that person, that soul needs to go through to wake up, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot interfere. That's another thing. Ask yourself, am I interfering in somebody else's process, either by enabling them, or saying whatever they want to hear, or by providing them stuff that hurts them just because you don't know how to say no. I mean, there's so many things, right? But you have to start, you know setting, with questions. What am I doing for this person? Am I really helping them? Am I holding space by just allowing them to express themselves without giving an opinion, without criticizing, without wanting to fix them, so they can just, express themselves? Or what am I doing?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of questions you can, ask yourself, and identify how are you, you know, overdoing it. So
Mhm.
you can step back, observe, separate yourself from the other person, right? And or from the situation. That's how you start, creating an independent field for yourself. So
Mhm.
stepping back, observing, questioning, right? And feeling it in your body. It's so incredible as empaths when we enter a room and there has been an argument, we immediately pick it up. Or if there are spirits in the house, there are lower dens, or
Yeah.
if there's funny business going on, we immediately pick it up in the body. I feel chills in the body, I feel waves of energy. And when it's something really negative, I feel this incredible desire to wash my hands,
Mm.
as my hands pick up so much density, and
Mhm.
I feel that I need to wash my hands. Like, where's water? Where's water? And that happens especially when I had to, like, if I move, and I have to
Mhm.
see houses and stuff. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh. And my husband is the same way with that.
Wow.
So we're both really in tune empathetically to the energies of the places.
Yeah.
Immediately with like, oh, something's there, let's go, let's go, So yeah, but the fact that once you understand, I can care but not carry, that for me was a lighting bulb that went off, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, there's a way I can, be without suffering so much for
Mhm.
stuff that is not even mine, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, of course, more spiritually mature, I can allow someone else to express themselves and not interfere, but offer a guiding hand, right?
Mhm.
And not, yeah, allowing them to choose. For example, this comes to mind a few years ago when my dad passed away. I had a great lesson that I learned through pain. I was not able to go to him because he was very sick. His kidneys was completely shut down. He was in dialysis 3 times a week, and so I was here in the States. He was in Venezuela, and my passport, Venezuelan passport, had expired. And I've been waiting for a new passport for over 2 years, and nothing
Mhm.
happened. So didn't want to risk going into the country not being able to get out, because I have 4 kids, a husband, a life. I couldn't risk that, right? So I was in this, debating the situation. So anyway, long story short, one day I feel this need to go within intuitively, and I going through this meditation on my own, like, and I saw myself arriving at his hospital room. So I'm there in the hospital, and I see him laying in the bed, and when I look to the right, I see an angel there, and and the angel tells me, "Okay, it's time to go." And I'm like, "Okay,
Mm,
go where?" Like, so we both grab my dad and we start
mhm,
ascending in this
mm.
tunnel, like up and up and up, like this movie, Doctor Strange, when you go through
Oh, yeah, yeah.
portal like really really fast. That's how we went. I was seeing all these colors, all these things. So anyway, there came a time where the angel said, "Okay, we have to stop, and this is up to where you can come with us, say your goodbyes." And
Mm,
and so I said, "Dad, I love you so much." I hugged him, I said goodbye, and I saw them disappear. All
mhm,
of a sudden, my phone rings, and I'm startled, and I pick up the phone, and it's my brother. And he said, "My dad just passed away." And I'm like,
mm,
"What?" I kept,
mm,
I was like, "What? At what time? At what time?"
mm.
And what do you want to know the time? I need to know the time, because that's when I was really
Yeah.
into the, meditation, vision, whatever. And he said 5:05. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's
Mm,
exactly when I was there."
mm,
And before all of this happened, I was struggling with, talking to God and saying, should I pray for him to stay? Should I
mm,
pray for him to go? Right?
mhm.
And I learned that it's not about me. So I said, okay, just honor the blueprint of his soul, please. And because I can have an agenda for selfish reasons, just wanting him to stay, but I didn't have that because I knew he was suffering very much. So I initially prayed for him to go and not
Mm,
suffer. But I said, I cannot interfere with divine will, because divine will may say, okay, he needs to go through this a few more days or months or whatever to ignite this shift in his consciousness.
mhm.
So you can never interfere with anybody else's process. So once you learn to honor divine will and accept, right? Because here in this limited level of consciousness that we hold here in the lower,
Mhm.
never even fathom the greatness of divine.
Yeah.
We can imagine things, but it's 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 too much,
Yeah.
it's too great.
Yeah.
So
And the
that was
soul's
another,
purpose, right? And
yeah.
their evolution.
And
And
what
I
he
think,
exactly needed,
yeah.
to spark the
Mhm.
remembrance of his divine spark
Yeah.
within. So you can never interfere in somebody else's process. And as empath, I mean, you can imagine how I felt. And of course, on top of that, it was my own father. So you have to step back and observe and always call in divine guidance and always honor divine will.
Yeah.
Because, as empaths, that's how you can get lost, trying to fix everybody, trying to
Totally.
help everybody. And
Yeah.
then you end up being burned out because you're not focusing on yourself, which is
Totally.
exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
Not get distracted by the outer world, but,
Yeah.
because the moment you go back into your divine self and access your divine spark, that's how you can truly serve others, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Becoming your pillar of light, emanating all this love, all this light outside of yourself to help others find their own way,
Hmm. Yeah.
to
So then as an empath, some of the positives is that obviously, we're highly sensitive. We can tap into the energies in rooms and the environment and the collective, etc., all that. But some of the downfalls is that a lot of us, that it's that wounded healer archetype as an
yeah.
empath that we tend to, they always say, you attract the narcissist, you attract, all these other, really
Oh,
polarized
right. Yeah.
energies, right? But the reason we are is because we're not, individualized, right? We're individuate, excuse me. And we don't have the spiritual maturity yet to really understand what's happening with us. And we're actually the beautiful thing is that we're coming out of systems of control. And so we're, it's like these templates that we have and these programs, and everyone has, they have it within them to want to control another person. And I think it's because, we've been controlled, and the lack of our own control of our own, our own life. It's easier to, to offer, advice or project or try to control another person. But, the thing is, we have to like Leah's really stating here, we really have to honor the soul's journey and their lessons. And no matter how difficult sometimes it may be to feel, to see, we're not saying don't help people. We're just saying there's this boundary, there's this line. So as an empath, to learn, to have healthy boundaries is number one is key. And then, we have to embody so many other things and, learn who we are and how we're sensing energies and perceiving it, and knowing that whether it's ours or it's something else. And then, again, learning some of those archetypes about like the wounded healer. So as an empath, we can be uber sensitive. I mean, and it's just a journey, right? So everyone kind of goes through these, lessons where we're just wanting to heal and help everybody, and but we're also taking on their stuff and their karma, and we're interfering, and it can really make our lives even more difficult. So then we become, like you said, you're taking on so much, you become resentful. You're taking, you're exhausted. You stay behind, and look at I've been probably guilty of all of those things, right? And I've had to learn the hard way.
It's a learning process.
Right. But at the same time, it's amazing because I can actually be in the room like Leah. I don't necessarily always see, but I can feel and I can sense. It's like a drop of water for me. Like I'm in this ocean, in my nervous system. I've learned to really kind of communicate with my nervous system. And so if there's any discordancy, whether it's a thought form or an energy, I feel it as ripples in my body. It's like, oh, I just felt something that's off. And then I know what to do in my physical body to alchemize that energy, or, put up even a different boundary, or, send that energy back to source or whatever, right? So you learn how to deal with a lot of these other unwanted energies sometimes. But it's a feeling. In some people, you might feel it as, sensations, you might feel it as overwhelm, but anxiety is your key. Anxiety, anytime you feel anxious around someone or something, or your body goes into that it wants to go into that fight and flight, that's a red flag. So we too often avoid or deny, or, that red flag, because we've been programmed to say, you're supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to, reach out to that person. You're supposed, supposed to, and you're negating your own nervous system, your own inner compass. And I don't know how many times I've done that, where like, you should do this. And then, like you're kind of guilted. And then I'm in this environment and my body's going off the radar. I mean, off the hook, like bells.
Another cue is if you were told as a kid that, oh, you're too sensitive.
Totally.
Oh my God. I was told that all the time. Oh, you're too sensitive. You're always crying. You're too sensitive. Oh my God. And
totally.
The funny thing is that we're the strongest ones.
Yeah,
right? Because we're feeling everybody.
Because we feel everything. And then like, sometimes not always a positive and not always good. But at the same time, it is because, the sensitives are the ones that are really kind of paving the way. We're learning how to really hold space for another person without the judgment, without the projections, without, the control, right?
Yeah.
Because we'll be teaching divine sovereignty on this podcast. And so for me, I think because I came into such a controlling environment, and, I think pretty much everyone that I've met is like, has taught me Where am I not in, where am I not standing in my sovereignty? So for me, that autonomy, the spiritual autonomy, the divine sovereignty is really important for me.
Yeah. Audrey, I feel that now, you mentioned it before, and it's such a critical component for an empath to know that, you know, the classical relationship you will come in this lifetime or any other lifetime is the relationship with a narcissist.
Totally.
And narcissistic consciousness is a parasitic consciousness that comes, from the Antichrist. That's in two sense, the reality of it.
That
That's
is the
why
reality.
that's why they have no empathy, they're controlling, they are have no filter in their mouth with whatever comes. They don't care if they hurt you, if they cross
Yeah.
boundaries, if they destroy your
They're
reputation,
vindictive.
completely vindictive, and it's about if they cannot have you, they will destroy you. So empaths have to be mindful of, that's like the main teacher in this lifetime will be a narcissist, because it will either, they experience, not them, but the experience will either build you or destroy you
Yeah.
completely, because I've experienced that with a couple of beings
Yeah.
and it almost destroyed me
Yeah.
completely, literally. So you have to, through those initiations, you have to learn how to regain your power back. That's why the ability to set boundaries is it's incredibly important for an empath, because that's how you're going to start honoring your own self and not getting lost in somebody else's story.
Yeah.
When
So
I
it's really getting to know who you are. And there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with being an empath and sensitive. Just like
no,
my
it's
expression
amazing.
in the
Yeah,
beginning of this podcast, to be able to, feel this love to my divine sister and express that. There's nothing wrong. That's healthy,
no,
right?
it's
And we've been
beautiful.
so programmed to like not to show this emotion, not to feel this vulnerability or to
Mm,
show the vulnerability. But
yeah.
it's our gift.
No,
And
and the most the most freeing expression is your authenticity. That's when
totally.
you truly shine, And I remember this is another lesson I've learned as an empath is
Mhm.
my first marriage was a complete disaster. I was married to a verbal abuser and very narcissistic personality. And so I was married for only 5.5 years, but that
Mhm.
took so much abuse that it's like I felt, like a tree without the sap, completely. Uh, um, but anyway, the point of my experience, the lesson I learned is that one day I was watching The Matrix when it came out
Mhm.
the first time, and that movie completely changed my life because it made me see, it made me see and realize that I was living somebody else's life, that was not my life. I was living a lie.
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw that, I could not unseen it,
Yeah.
So that helped me to ask for a divorce, and that's when
Mm.
the real narcissistic blow back with revenge and trials and lawyers, and the whole nightmare began in that time of my life. But you have to realize that if you have a relationship with a narcissist, as an empath, you're drawn because of this lack of empathy. You want to save them, you
Yeah.
want to heal them, you want to help them, and you think very naively that you're going to change them.
Yeah.
So that's the first lesson you have to learn. You're not going to change them ever,
Mhm. Yeah.
because they have this parasitic consciousness and
Yeah.
they just want to suck your life force away from you, and then move on and do the same to another.
Yeah. And
So
it's a conscious thing as an empath. And it's like you're just innate nature to like, oh, to see the good in another person. Or
yeah,
to like, oh, understand. So for me, as I came in, pretty much semi-awake and always feeling everything. So you're kind of taught to kind of disown what you're feeling. You're not taught to value your sensitivity, but at the same time, everyone in your environment is using your sensitivity for their advantage, right? And it's an
a
unconscious, and I
weapon.
didn't know that was happening in my own relationships as I was growing up.
Mhm.
And so the thing is like, oh well, you know, I could see their soul, their higher aspects, and you try to see the good in people, right? You try to be there and be the inner, the good child, right? I know better, so I'm going to, negate my own self, my own health, you know, um, my own values to for them because I understand what they're going through and I'm compassion, right? Because as empath, you have enormous amount of compassion. And so you're always, accepting someone else's behavior. And even though it's horrible behavior, and I have to tell you, I even experienced this just recently, right? Like, people, the way they would, they're treating me and and I still was like, oh, I get it, but was still there until you're like, no, you know what, I'm not, I get it, but I don't have to accept that because that's not
Yeah,
healthy, and that's not the type of relationships that I want in my life. So it's always still kind of, for me, it's like this
yeah,
little toggle of, what I can perceive and I'm willing to accept in another, but then also like a really saying, you know what, you could be that way, but not in in our
right.
relationship, and that's not acceptable, right? So it's kind of
Yeah,
learning to stand up for yourself as well as an
yeah,
empath,
yeah.
you
And you
know.
have to go back into your own childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we repeat the patterns and choose a partner that is narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
it is because one of our parents was a narcissist or at
Yeah.
least had narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah.
So that's the normal we grew up. And somehow the soul lesson is, okay, I'm gonna give you another chance so you repeat and find a narcissistic partner, right? To give you the opportunity to empower yourself, to, see all the areas where you're leaking power and you're giving your power
Totally.
away, so you can truly learn. But it
Yeah.
always comes back to, having that narcissistic relationship in your early years when you were
Mm-hmm.
growing up. So that's when you learn survival programs. That's when you learn how to, not defend yourself, not stand up. And if you have like an explosive parent, you learn to be afraid and you're like, oh, okay. So in order for me to survive, it's better to shut everything down. All my
Totally.
feelings, don't complain, don't say anything, just shut down completely
That was
until
me.
the rage goes out, and then I'm safe again. So then when you have, a partner as an adult, because you have that fractured inner child, you will react exactly as if you were 3 years old, 10 years old, when you're confronted with this new experience. So for empaths, that had this type of relationship, and everybody else actually, you have to go
Yeah.
back and rescue those fragmented aspects of your soul that are still living those experiences on a loop in your unconscious.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's why when you get triggered, as that's
Mm-hmm.
how people react as in childish behaviors, because they're still fragmented inside. So
Yeah.
that's why empaths, have to see what type of relationship they had growing up, and address,
And
find
yeah.
out the root cause of, okay, why am I allowing to be a doormat with this guy
Totally.
or this woman or my boss or
Yeah.
whoever, so it's always, you have all the information you need, in your
Mm-hmm.
past. So that's why, that's the only reason worth to revisit the past, if you hold trauma, you know.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of people who can safely guide you there, like Audrey, myself, and others.
totally.
But it's really important to bring every piece of your fragmented self back into
Mhm.
love, into
Yeah,
this wholeness, so you can truly sustain staying in the higher timeline. Because if you have unresolved grief, issues, trauma, you're not going to be able, the filter is too
anger,
great, the
pain,
intensity is too great, and everything will, be in your face screaming for attention, right?
totally.
So
Yeah,
you have to go through all that shadow work as an empath
yeah,
to really heal yourself, and before you can help others, you have to help yourself, right?
totally, totally.
And
Yeah.
that's really important, and also educate yourself about, even buying a book about narcissistic techniques, what do they use as a weapon, because everything is their actions, their words, gaslighting,
So I
blaming
want
you
to
for
talk about
everything.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I want to talk a little bit about like the actions, right? So a lot so when we're talking about narcissists, it's not always like a full-blown narcissist. There's
Oh, it can
narcissistic
have
tendencies
tendencies, or
in someone, right?
yeah,
And so what we say is they could be saying all the right things, but actions, remember, actions speak louder than words. So like they're like,
yeah,
oh, loving, but when when it comes to, they're are they showing up for you? Are they loving? Are they kind? Are they projecting? So it's all these things. So as an empath, so not only our past, but it's like, what are relationships reflecting back to us, right? How is someone behaving towards us, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so then that's always a huge indication of either green flags or red flags, right?
exactly.
And then, so another thing I wanted to point out, because Leah's, really hitting some really beautiful key points here about fragmentation. So anytime we experience discord, really discord, especially as children, trauma and pain, remember, trauma could be like something, um, also kind of something innocent, but really kind of had a traumatic response on that you as a child, right? So what happens is a multidimensional aspect kind of gets fragmented. So we have all this pain and they're kind of like locked up. So again, coming back to that crystal, so then you imagine the crystal has these shards and fractures within it. And those are all aspects of ourself that get either locked in time, get frozen, get robbed, get siphoned. I mean, it lists, there's so many different things, but we'll just kind of keep it kind of simple. But anyway, so we have to go and heal some of those fractured aspects of ourselves, right? And sometimes they're really unconscious. Some of them we're really, really conscious of it. And so the key is to find, like, Leah was saying, a really advanced kind of teacher facilitator that can really help you find some of those aspects and retrieve them and bring them back into wholeness. Because until we do that, we'll always feel like we're a victim. We're projecting blame. We shut down. We're frozen, right? We're not able to move forward and, and access higher aspects of ourselves and access higher levels of awareness or consciousness, whatever. So on the ascension, we're not moving forward because we're locked in, lower timelines, lower aspects of ourselves. We're like in the hamster wheel. We're unconscious that actually we have control over those things, right? So then these are some of these important components that we have to recognize and know that everything can be healed. It just takes dedication, the willingness to want to heal those aspects, to evolve. So it's not just about sitting in meditation and saying, oh, I'm going to access higher divine templates, because it doesn't work that way. Those templates are not going to be downloaded into that beautiful crystal until you fix all those, fractures, right? So
Yeah.
so there are so many tools. I mean, I'll have all of Leah's links, and all her services and offerings. And, she is, amazing facilitator, healer, and can really help you access things that you didn't even know were there. So I'll provide all her links, her mentorships, her offerings, her services. Of course, mine are going to be there as well. I do actually have on a spiritual hygiene for the empath. It's a really easy course at self-pace where, I offer some teachings on, how to call yourselves back, set protection protocols, to, learn more about who you are as an empath as well. And then of course, some of my offerings and services, but we're actually coming almost to an hour, Leah. So is there anything else that you just really wanted to kind of let our listeners know about, a positive or, hit key on something else? So.
Well, it's really hard to pinpoint something, but it comes to mind that, if you're an empath and you are starting to date somebody, for example, the way narcissistic people react is by love bombing you at the beginning, right?
Mm.
And putting you in a pedestal, right? So you as an empath, you're like, oh, this guy loves me or this girl loves me and this and the other. But then you have to notice the red flags, right? You have to become a really sharp observer of all the ways, because at the beginning they will hide their personality and their traits, but then little by little you start figuring out, oh, so for example, if they invite you to dinner, did they chose the restaurant? How do they treat the servers? How do they treat the women in their life, their mother, their sisters, their coworkers? Like there's so many things you can observe and see, because everything will get revealed, at some point. So
Yeah.
just be very mindful and observe the actions, not their words so much at the beginning, but their action, they're consistent, with their behavior. And also know that as an empath, you will always have this ability to feel more than others. But it's a matter of, like Audrey said in the beginning, knowing where you begin and where your field ends, and always question yourself, why am I feeling this? Is there anything going on in my life that justify why, this feeling, this sensation? Many empaths are also have the ability of have clairvoyance. So maybe you're sensing something from the future, and so it's like trying to develop your own dictionary, and finding meaning of everything that comes into your field, be it, in your physical body, in your emotional body, in your mental body. And then, in another time that we can discuss, Audrey, I would like to discuss, the rules of the game, because
Yeah.
in this lower matrix that it's completely collapsing, we were never taught the rules of the game. So the other team has advantage over us, in
Yeah.
every single way. They're 10 steps ahead,
Oh.
so it's very important as empaths today to learn what are the rules of the game and how to identify which are my thoughts and which are not my
Mhm.
thoughts. Who's projecting this bombardment of dark thoughts of doubt or anger or fear into my
Yeah.
consciousness, and I feel it so much. But then, you get distracted with the meaning, but you don't ask, why did I have this thought?
Mhm.
So that's really important as well as empaths to question the quality of our thoughts.
Yeah.
Who's talking to me? Is it my soul or is a parasite? So
Mhm.
it's really important. So thank you
Or a
so
wounded
much.
owl,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, no, and that's such a great that was really great offering because it's we can go on and
I know
on
it's really
this
hard to
topic, right? Because it's like
narrow things
so
down.
condensed. So I'm
Really
almost
hard.
yeah, so I'm almost thinking we probably should have like a second episode on as an empath, because but I definitely love that topic of the rules of the game, because we're really getting to know who we
Yeah.
are as a soul, right? in every podcast, I like to always make sure that people understand that we are multidimensional, beautiful spiritual beings having this human experience. And we have to remember that. And so we're not just these mortals and everything that we've been programmed to believe we are. We're so much more, we have the greatest potential. And, and so, but most of all, just, it's just to have the awareness that we're all having this human experience, and we're trying to remember, unlearn the human experience and remember our divineness. So within that, it's challenging sometimes. It's very,
It's a long
very
path.
challenging
Yeah, to walk through. Yeah.
So
that's why it's important to keep your heart open, because we have to go through so much.
So much.
And learn the other, the opponent. It's an invisible opponent that you have to know that it's there, so you know how to protect yourself and how to identify, who is it that is talking to you in your thoughts unconsciously, and then you believe those thoughts. It's really important.
Yeah, so thank you for, bringing that up to the forefront, because we'll definitely have a conversation about that. And but thank you so much for, holding space and coming on and sharing your divine wisdom. And again, for those who desire to work with this divine woman, oh my goodness, I can't say enough praises. And it's not only me, there's so many of us that really benefit from, working with Leah and everything that she brings to this world. She is really, really divine. So thank you, my beloved sister. I love you so much.
Me too.
And I can't wait to have you back on for some other incredible conversations. And thank you all for listening. And we send you so much love and compassion, and know that you are not walking this journey alone. So
thank you, Audrey. Thank you.